and it shows shows that we're recording, so that's good. Well, Dr. Paul, thanks again for joining me today. I think it's really important that these kinds of conversations occur, and I hope that we can, basically touch upon concepts that I think a lot of our patients and colleagues and clients would want to hear. So if that's
Yeah,
that's okay with you, I'd like to just introduce you a little bit
sure. It's great to be with you, Ryan.
too. So Dr. Paul Schattauer is the founder and owner of the Green Medical Practice in Oak Park, Illinois. And you can correct me if I get anything wrong, but Dr. Paul started his practice in 2010, and his greatest joy is to inspire patients to take charge of their own health. His desire is to plant seeds of health and wellness into the hearts and minds of his patients. And you can find more information about Dr. Paul and his practice at thegreenmedicalpractice.com.
Yes.
Okay, anything else to add to that?
Well, just so everybody knows, I did have a 23-year career prior to opening the Green Medical Practice of quite a career of natural medicine, and with the focus on home birthing. So I went out to people's homes for 23 years, probably delivered over 1,000 babies at home. And it was just my introduction to this amazing world of natural medicine and how the power of nature in our medical world, in our healthcare system.
That's awesome. So your background started a while before you ventured out on your own.
Exactly. Yes. 10 years ago, I decided to stop doing the actual birth itself, but then everything right after birth. Like, I love to see newborns, because that, to me, as we're going to get into, boy, the sooner you start, the better with some of these ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So the concept of this conversation is surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. And the reason I think we can have these conversations is to, again, help our patients and clients understand a little more about it, maybe in a time when people don't feel like they have as much control. I'm hoping that we can give them perspective so that they walk away from hearing this conversation and feeling like they can take some measures into their own hands.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like this opportunity, because there is a lot of concern out there. There's a lot of messages that do bring up a lot of anxiety. And whenever something challenging is happening, I always want to try to find that golden nugget or something that's really empowering in the midst of this challenge. And I think, if anything, this pandemic is focusing a lot of people's ideas, and a lot of researchers are asking very pointed questions, and it's an exciting time when it comes to things that really do give us a new sense of empowerment, a new sense of understanding, and a new sense of an awareness that we never would have had as a collective. Maybe some of us here and there, we're getting into all these fun ideas about health and wellness, and now everybody has to sort of deal with this, in the sense of this feeling of loss of control, and what can I do about it?
Right. Absolutely. And I think too that in some cases, you're right, it poses this opportunity. And I think in other cases right now, there are some people that have maybe let the fear build up in them, more than usual.
Yeah.
Just given that this is unprecedented in so many ways. I mean, now we are even hearing Governor Pritzker speak about maybe there being e-learning even in the fall. So I mean, that's the kind of thing I want to help kind of go, well, what can we do? Because some things are out of our control. One of the, things that I wanted to ask and just kind of have a discussion about is that many of health professionals have discussed the cytokine storm syndrome as a process by which the severely ill COVID-19 infected patients are basically experiencing the symptoms that put them in the hospital and on ventilators, and it can be fatal.
Right.
can you give a little, shed a little light on how this happens and what the seriousness of it is?
Right, because I think that's what everybody fears the most, because we are given the information that most of us can get this virus and not have any detrimental effects at all. In fact, some of it can be, most people will get a mild case, and some people won't even realize they've been exposed or have antibodies. And so there's these very encouraging messages that this is a virus that our systems can handle. And it makes sense because we're made in a miraculous way to handle viruses. We've had viruses around for many, many centuries, eons of time. You know, we've evolved with, and we can get into this, but we've evolved with viruses as an integral part of our evolution as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not so separated from obviously we have to deal with the challenges, but we also can be aware of the benefits of everything that's going on around us. And the thing that about the cytokine storm is sort of a malfunction of our system, of our beautiful, elegant system. What is the trigger, or what makes it so overwhelming in certain circumstances? And this is what gets into our messages from the media, because it's very dramatic on some levels, like little children all of a sudden having this amazing challenge health-wise, or a young 35-year-old, one day is fine and 3 days later is on a ventilator. Why, for you and me, and for many integrative and functional medicine minded practitioners, our question is, what possibly could, in this elegant system, what is the alteration that makes it so detrimental? It's kind of like, what's the malfunction of the Challenger spacecraft? I mean, that obviously that was tragic beyond tragic, but it was an intricate, beautiful system that went totally wrong on some level. And what are we going to do to build ourselves up from that, and not get captured by that, and not feel that we are in the category that could happen? And it's
because it is an immune response, right? I mean, it may be gone haywire. Is that it?
Right. Exactly.
Like an
So
overreaction.
let's just kind of say what it really is. It's the immune system is beautiful to begin with, and it's elegant, it's complex, it's made to handle everything like the coronavirus gives us. And there's nothing new about the coronavirus that our system isn't beautifully designed to handle. So what happens is, when there's an infection or a challenge for the immune system, that means that immune system has to perform in order to fight against that particular insult, or that particular challenge, or that particular bacteria, that particular virus. So it has to build and mount an offense against that challenge. Okay, now when you are mounting an offense, if for some reason that immune response goes a bit too far, because these immune responses are essentially killers of the virus or killers of the bacteria. So if you have enough killers out there, you're going to get the enemy, essentially. However, if you take your own armies and start, bombing everything around, all of a sudden you're starting to injure your own self. And they did autopsies on the pandemic of 2018 when they went back in 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic. When they did autopsies on those people, they weren't dying of the virus at all. They were dying of the immune response.
Right.
What this is being called now, the cytokine storm.
Mm-hmm.
So a young, healthy person that appears well, all of a sudden has this overreaction. It's almost like the strength of that army is so robust that it injures its own self. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and that's why a young, healthy person, you can look at them and say, well, that person is young and healthy. They shouldn't have any problem. and then they did have a problem. So what is it in their system that's missing or too much of or whatever? And we can go down the line. This is all theory now, but we have lots of great data now to support the fact that what we do with our nutrition, what we do with our exposure to sunshine, what we do with our exposure to community life and interaction as a human being socially, what that does to our brains and minds and immune system, how those particular elements actually build up the immune system, and how also it can keep it tampons down the immune system when needed. It's like an amazing computer when it's all functioning properly.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've experienced some of that too, Ryan.
Well, I think that's the part that I want people to understand, and I'd like to understand it too a little better, is that, an over response to a virus such as this doesn't always mean someone doesn't have a functioning immune system. It could mean that they took on a viral load that was a lot in a little amount of time, or they may have some comorbidity that doesn't allow them to fight it as well, or it's the body has to then, it's compensated in multiple ways, right?
So the question is your immune system not fighting hard enough, or is it fighting too much? And I think in the sense of someone that has comorbidities, their immune system is already functioning poorly. Mm-hmm. So they're having trouble actually fighting the virus. Now, someone that has, let's just say, to me, one of the main things that for a young person that looks completely healthy and has no comorbidities, I want to know what their vitamin D level is, because in our culture right now, we have an epidemic of vitamin D deficiency. If we tested on 100 people, about 75 to 80 of them would be testing low in the vitamin D level. Mm-hmm. Vitamin D has an amazing history in the human health and how it interacts with human health. And it's actually kind of a magical kind of element in the immune system, in that it will actually boost up the immune system and produce antibacterial and antiviral, they're called antimicrobial peptides.
Okay.
And there's a long name for it that I keep forgetting, and I'll look it up and I'll get it to you. But it's actually produced by the vitamin D molecule, and when it's manufactured, and then it goes to different parts of the body, and different parts of the body will actually manufacture powerful antivirals. Okay, so someone that has a low functioning immune system is not going to have that advantage. Now, there's another property of vitamin D in the sense that it senses when there's this overproduction of the elements that are going to actually injure the tissues of the host itself. And that's the other property of vitamin D. So it has both the ability to tampen down the immune system and build it up. And no one will sense from a day-to-day basis, on a regular basis, that they have low vitamin D. That's the hard part. You can sense when you're diabetic. You can sense when you have cancer. You can sense when you have all these other comorbidities. So we've identified that population as at risk, right? And we can talk about that later, of what we do with that population. Mm-hmm. But then there's this kind of this eerie kind of element of young people that will just kind of, boom, they'll just go down the tubes like that. And that just shouldn't happen. My theory, and I don't have, I do have some research articles that talk about this, but my theory is that those young people, or the people that shouldn't have died or shouldn't have been hospitalized, have low vitamin D. Mm-hmm. And I would be right, even if it wasn't the right answer, I would be right 80% of the time that they do have low vitamin D. Mm-hmm. And whether or not it's directly related or not to the cytokine storm, mm-hmm. what they're saying right now, how to deal with some of the cytokine storm, is to dig out the pharmaceuticals that are designed, and everybody knows them because they're on the commercials all the time now
Yeah.
for psoriasis and for autoimmune diseases,
Right.
and they're scary drugs. If you listen to those advertisements,
Hmm.
it's like they're mostly poison in the sense that if you're sick in any way, it takes away all your ability to fight infection.
Hmm.
So to put that in our system, and then we can't fight the infection. So now we're going to have the problem. But why don't we check their vitamin D level? I mean,
Right.
I think I heard Fauci, the
Right.
administrator in the White House, talk one time, and I was told by one of my patients that he did mention vitamin D
Like
one time.
you had to catch it if you were listening carefully and watching every press
Right.
conference, right?
But the people that are informing the CDC and informing Fauci, they're seeing it from a certain model, and it works. I mean, it works on some level. It's the biomedical model, and
Sure.
it's pharmaceutical companies that kind of engender this model that we have to find something that can control this, whether it's
Right.
an antiviral, or it's an anti-inflammatory, whether it's a vaccine, something that the human being can develop in order to fight this, in order
Right.
to survive. I think we have the answer that is more elegant and more sustainable and
Hmm.
more available to
Yeah.
everybody in the moment. We don't have to distribute it, manufacture it, approve it, or get
Right.
FDA approval. When we can get into some of the nutritional aspects,
Right.
but vitamin D is number one on my list. It's so simple. If you can't, like right now, you can get your level tested, go to a physician and get it tested.
Blood
I,
test, right?
yeah, I do tests all the time
Hmm.
because I feel like this is an important part.
Absolutely.
And I've
I
had
agree.
amazing turnarounds of healthcare issues, not related to this virus,
Right.
but related to all kinds of inflammatory issues, diabetes, cancer, asthma, autoimmune. It just enters into all of our cells.
It's systemic on that level
It
in terms
is
of what it can help. Well,
right.
I mean, I know that for years I've done a lot more just oral D3,
Mhm.
especially from November to March when flu season is up, even though I still would get the vaccine because the vaccine wasn't always the right strain, right? And
Mhm.
so what I was always thinking, what can I do for myself? Again, trying to put a little bit of control back into a person's, psyche.
Right, because you hit it right, because the psyche is really important as far as we can get into that too, as far as the immune system and what your ability to believe and to have that faith and confidence and empowerment really makes things work better in your system. If you feel dependent and kind of scared and full of anxious feelings, your immune system will be lowered by those anxieties. So I don't want people to get anxious because they're anxious. but but you want to sort of interrupt that anxiety with something that's true, something that's powerful, something that really they can hold on to and be it can become part of the way in which people operate in the world. And but the dosage of vitamin D, I would say, here's my doses for my patients.
I was going to ask, so
For
that's very good.
children, I 1 to 2,000. If they're a little tyke, 1,000. If they're kind of toddlers, 2,000. If they're young children, 3,000.
These are
Okay, so
daily,
just 1 to 2 to 3,000, depending on how big your kid is.
and that's per day.
Yeah, every day. And then for adults, if with no testing, I will do 5,000. But if you want to do more than 5,000 IU's, international units, then I'd recommend a test before you do that. Because
That would be prudent.
there's it's a pretty wide range, and there's really no reason to fear vitamin D. But there is a range you want to kind of stay in. I like to stay within a 50 to 80 range.
Okay.
You won't get into trouble unless you're above 100 or even 150.
And these are like a milligram per deciliter type
Yeah,
in
I think
blood
it's
test.
nanograms per.
Nanogram. Okay.
So I can't even remember, but it's a very standard. They're all testing the same thing now,
Okay.
and 50 to 80 is the range I like to see people in.
Okay.
Just so for your reference, less than 20, you only need a level of 20 to prevent rickets, which is how vitamin D was discovered.
Interesting, yeah.
And that's why all the research stopped after they discovered that in the turn of the century. It's when the kids were being forced into kind of slave-like labor in these factories, and they weren't allowed outside. And all
So
of a
it
sudden,
was dark factories with low lighting,
right, and
other
there's
poor quality
no
conditions,
for 12 hours a day,
maybe
and
more.
they developed rickets, which
Yeah.
their bones gnarled.
Mm,
And someone discovered that just 10 or 15 minutes out once a day in the sunshine, and
right.
that cures. There's no more, right? There's no more rickets. And so it's funny how researchers, when they think they get an aha moment, they stop the research at that
Hmm.
point, and they
Right.
set the level of normal at 20.
Right.
That's what it was for until just a couple decades ago, when people were starting to wonder. And now the normal range is from 30 to 100. That's the
Right.
normal range. So you're still
Right.
seeing
Pretty
that
wide bandwidth.
huge
Yeah.
bandwidth, which
Yeah.
means you're still arguing over it.
Hmm.
But to me, you want to optimize the benefits. And I think that if you really see the research, then you'll see that the benefits of certain things happen at higher levels. So
So then
no,
closer to 80 range, like you said, 50, 80,
it's
but you know,
50 to 80.
right.
I don't bother people too much at 50. But when they get down to below 50, I start to say, okay, maybe you need 10,000 instead of 5,000. But then we do another test.
And that was my next question. How quickly would we be able to see a difference, right? A meaningful change if you told me, okay, Ryan, start taking 5,000 a day,
Mhm.
and we're going to test in 1 week or 2 weeks. I mean,
I would say I give my patients a 4 week,
okay.
like if I'm testing, sometimes I'll test even before they start, but I'm okay with somebody taking 5,000 just however, and then just test sometime after a month.
Okay. Give them a
After a
month
month.
for their levels to shift.
Yeah, I think the steady state probably is there in 2 to 3 weeks, but I do 4 to 6 weeks for
Okay.
people to come back for a test.
Right.
And I do see it's amazing. I see people get their levels just right.
And that's great because we're at this level of latitude in in Chicagoland and a lot of parts of this country. Sunlight doesn't start really coming in, until May, June,
Mhm.
and then it's out by November. And so we have this huge time where we're not getting exposed to sunlight to synthesize it, right? And
And
to
that's exactly when the flu season is.
exactly
So
right,
it
right.
mirrors
So
the flu
more
season,
less sunlight,
right? And you don't have flu seasons on the equator if you think about
right?
it. And the wonderful thing about vitamin D is that it stores in our fat cells. It's a lipid,
Soluble.
it's lipid soluble, so it goes into our fat cells and it just sits there until it's needed, which
Hmm.
is great because in the summertime we can build up that storage system, and
Okay.
that's how we if you're not doing any supplementation, if you're a sun worshiper through the summer, I mean, I don't recommend burning, but I
Don't
mean, I
overdo
would
it, right? But regular exposure that
10 I
is
say
going to
10
burn.
to 15, 10 to 15 minutes of no sunscreen, completely direct sunlight during the times that the dermatologists say not to be there, like 10 to 2.
Hmm.
That's when you really want, because the sun is coming down straight at that point,
And you're doing it on as much of your body as possible,
right?
but just for a period of time, and then you could put the sunscreen on
Yeah,
or get out in
exactly.
the
You
sun,
don't want to burn,
right?
but you want to have you have skin exposure for 10 to 15 minutes, then you probably don't even need the supplement. I mean, that's probably the best way
Yeah.
to get it is in this, and then you build that up in this. But who can sunbathe every day for
Well,
15
that's
minutes?
true. I mean, especially maybe kids can, but
Yeah, that's our culture. We
yeah,
used to be that way. We used to be outdoors, and
right.
that's when we didn't have a problem.
Right. So the reality is supplementation is probably going to be necessary for the majority of people,
I think so. I
right?
mean, especially right now for the protection against the COVID pandemic, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and supplement right now.
Well, while we're on vitamins, and can we jump to vitamin C for a minute? because that's a water-soluble vitamin, but it also has been shown to have antiviral capabilities. And so I think even it was recently in some places they were using high dose IV vitamin C for COVID-19. Can you speak to
Exactly.
that at all, or just give a
Yes.
little about?
Yeah, I think New York City was the place where it was published that they were using a certain protocol, and they were using IV vitamin C. I think uh, I don't even remember exactly the dosages, but again, they're essentially it's experimenting, which is fine because it's a non-threatening, low risk.
Right. The toxic dose isn't really there for vitamin.
Right. It's just like most things in integrative medicine or
Right.
functional medicine. That's what's exciting about what we're proposing most of the time is that there's no detriment to
Mhm.
trying.
Right. The downside is much softer.
Right,
Not there.
right. And so then they've been showing some signs and some benefits. And I recommend vitamin C too right now. I mean, I personally try to take roughly 3 to 5,000 milligrams per day.
Mhm.
And sometimes it will upset your bowels
It
or
can, right? Yeah.
stomach, but if it does, then you can sort of back off.
Dial it back a little if you have some irritability
Not
or
right. It's
gas,
not going to harm you, like you
loose
said.
stools. But yeah, um, that I think is also abundant. It's not, I think you could go anywhere right now and at least find, maybe not the highest quality, but it's vitamin C, and it could be a good supplement.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's why it does get into this, it does get into our system some. I mean, our media talks about it some, but it's certainly not prolific and it's not talked about again and again and again where
Right? Like some
we
of these other things.
yeah, we need the education and we need it more than once.
Right. You need to hear it several times. For the populace needs to hear it several times to even register. Oh, maybe I should try that.
Exactly.
We're
Right.
not exactly getting it. And yeah.
Mhm.
One of the things that you mentioned, so we have vitamin D, we have vitamin C. One of the things that you mentioned in a video that you had done not too long ago, I have taken to heart, and it's something I did, gosh, as because I sing in a band, there have been times where I've had shows coming up, and I've had something tickle in my throat, and it was a day or two before the show, and I thought, uh-oh, and I would do the sea salt in warm water and gargle it. And I would just do that, up until my show, among other things, to get ready. And you mentioned that as trying to, using sea salt dissolved in warm water and gargling and getting that as much as you can into the, into the throat and kind of, trying to get that nasopharynx a little bit. And can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the the area of healthcare that really knows a lot about this is the dentists and the ear, nose, and throat doctors, and it's ubiquitous as far as their recommendations is to gargling with salt water, especially if there's any kind of mucosal sore, which are most mucosal sores, if they're infectious, are viral.
Viral, right?
So yes, gargling with salt water, swishing your mouth out, it's really sometimes the only thing we can offer
Right.
at times. And it's amazing, kind of soothing, not only soothing, but it's antiviral. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can,
And cheap.
yeah,
Super cheap.
again, it's ubiquitous.
Right.
It's available. And these are, and it's not something that to laugh at. It's something that's, like you said, it's empowering. It's something
Right.
we can just do. And
Right.
then,
And I'll
and
say
so,
I've been doing it I just, for some reason, and of course I'm in this field, but for some reason I feel the need and I feel the benefit from doing it morning and night. So every morning for probably at least a month, I've been, gargling with salt water in the morning and then right before I go to bed, among the vitamin D and vitamin C, which I'm doing as well, and trying to get better sleep and all those things. But you know, that's something that is just so readily available. And it
Yeah.
makes me also think of, and I've done this a couple times when I've just felt congestion kind of moving into the sinuses here. I've done a form of the neti pot,
Yeah.
but it's more like a hack, because I just take my saline,
Hmm.
you know, for contacts, and I do it the hard way.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
but it does seem to be another way of getting some, you know, a salinated fluid into these areas and just
Uh,
a purge.
so do you put that right in your nasal?
I don't let it touch, but I turn and I let it go. It's not warm either. It's kind of jarring. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that past beyond, you know, the
Hmm.
neti pot might be better, right?
Hmm.
But
But you put it right into your nose?
yeah, like this.
Yeah.
And I fill it up, and then I'm over a sink and I let it come out, and then I clear my sinuses. I do it probably a few times. It is not the most pleasant thing. It's not nearly as soothing as the saltwater gargle, but
Right.
I
Yeah.
think it has the same kind of, would you say, the same kind of, your strategy is the same there? You're trying an antiviral of sorts.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So those are, I think, three great strategies. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I think a big one, and you can tell me what you think about this, is again, we come back to the fear,
Mhm.
and we know that that still exists, and a certain amount of healthy, you know, caution is good, and that's kind of what we're experiencing too with the shelter in place and with the social distancing, and now with masks, not as much to protect us, but to protect other people from us, and just, you know, working together on that level. And yet still, there's no way that we aren't experiencing increased stress on a level that maybe hasn't been dipping back down. So I worry a little about the cortisol levels
Mhm.
in our bodies being elevated and then staying there, and what that can do to our immune system.
Yes, absolutely. The stress, the emotional stress.
Right.
And
The
it,
emotional stress of
yeah,
all of
yeah. Again, it's something we have to pay attention to. As you said, there's a level of stress that we all need, and it's very healthy. It's a really good attribute we have. You know, we're always using our stress system to perform really, and to put out the energy that we need to put out, and to do the tasks, and to have the creative thinking, and all these things are resulting from some sort of stressor, which is all good. But then when it gets out of balance, and when there's this high stress about this survival type stress, and it's constant and it's there over and over, then that system becomes depleted, and that system also actually acts as an immune, uh, it brings down the immune system, the ability of the immune system to function. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. I mean, you know that because steroids are the number one thing they go to for with somebody that has an asthma attack or something. You want to get rid of this immune response
right,
right away so the kid can breathe again. So you use steroids to do
right,
that. But if you have some infection going on in your system, you don't want to be bringing down your immune system to the point where it can't fight.
right. It's lowered its guard, and then it's not ready to take it on.
Right. So that's constant barrage of anxiety and anxious thinking and fear. I was listening to someone who was quoting Maya Angelou the other day, and she said something like, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, but that fear and hope are guests that uh, cannot occupy the same space. So you
Right,
have to decide which one you want to stay.
right.
You have to decide which one you want to invite to stay.
Right. And I think there's even actual, now there have been some neurologists that say fear and courage are the same neural pathway. It's,
Hmm.
you know, you could choose. You could choose
Yeah,
one. Or you can acknowledge fear
yeah,
and choose courage in the moment, right?
absolutely.
And I
Yeah,
hadn't heard the Maya Angelou. That's
and it feels good that there is a choice that we have. Our thoughts are chosen
right,
on some level, and that's one good thing to sort of acknowledge, that we can choose our thinking, and that when we have anxious thoughts that are out of bounds,
right,
then we have to admit that we can choose to alter that. And there are techniques,
Right.
and you probably, I don't know if you use any.
I do. There's one called the freedom technique. And again, I just in a way said it, but it basically has to do with when you can identify, and it takes a bit of practice. It's kind of like, how am I feeling right now? Can I pinpoint the actual feeling? And let's say it's fear, because that's a really easy one to at least acknowledge. And you can say, man, in this moment, something is getting at me. It doesn't feel good. And you can say, well, I'm scared to interact. I'm scared to go out of the house. I know there are people that are really scared to do that. And so you acknowledge it. You can sit down and just say, I am fear.
Mhm.
And then say, and freedom. So you take yourself, you free yourself from it. You acknowledge it. It's there. It's not like it's you don't belittle yourself or berate yourself. You don't beat yourself up about it, but you say, I am fear and freedom. And for that time being, it's a hack to kind of make sure that your mindset isn't getting completely stressed out.
Right. The fact that you can separate yourself a little bit and observe it rather than be controlled by it.
Yeah.
That is the first step, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Some people that have inspired me, I mean, what we're talking about is mindfulness,
Right.
or being mindful and being aware, getting more self-aware. The more self-aware we are, the more mindful we can be, and the less kind of on automatic or distracted we can be, the more focused we are on the what's at hand, rather than being thinking in
Right.
the past, or thinking in the worried about the future, regretting the past, instead of staying in the moment. Some of the people that have really helped me, and that I recommend quite a bit. One person is Deepak Chopra. I don't know if you've heard of him,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
but
Yes.
he has a wonderful offering right in the moment. He has this amazing offering of a free 21-day meditation on hope,
Oh,
and it's he and
with Oprah, right?
Oprah and him
Right.
together,
Yep.
and they have some amazing messages that really counterbalance this anxious. Even though we still have to deal with what's going on,
Right.
we don't have to deal with the anxiety and the fear.
Right.
We can have the thoughts, and we can choose which ones are very functional or very helpful
Right.
to actually creating behaviors that will help us, instead
Right.
of fear-based behaviors that tend to, if we make decisions out of fear, we tend to make irrational decisions and
Absolutely.
things that don't help us.
Right.
So Deepak Chopra, also another person that right now has been putting out, in fact, today she put out a live stream. Her name is Kelly Brogan.
Haven't heard of Kelly.
She's a psychiatrist.
Okay.
So MD,
Kelly
and her
Brogan. Brogen.
GAN.
Brogan.
Yeah, Kelly Brogan, MD, and she has an amazing presence online, and she offers a lot of content that is very helpful to people in a function. She would call herself a functional medicine psychiatrist. In
Okay.
other words, her go-tos are things that are from nature. In other words, instead of going straight to the pharmaceuticals to take care of anxiety, for instance, you
Right.
go to things like these techniques. Plus, her whole thing is on nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
There are powerful nutrients that are anxiolytics. You know, things that
Yes. Right.
instead of Paxil, or instead of the powerful drugs that, again, sometimes are necessary
Right.
in a certain situation, a survival thing or whatever, you might need something. But as far as getting to the root cause and actually changing from the root cause,
Right.
then what tools are we using?
Right.
And she has just this amazing wealth of information that has to do with a lot with anxiety and anxious thoughts, and how do we stay away from getting into a depression
Right.
from this. And yeah, I know she had something on today, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to see it later.
Yeah.
But those two people have really influenced me recently.
So I think it's always useful to have, a growing list, because for me, my favorites have been heart math, which is
Yeah.
Basically, it's a gratitude based, it's like almost a loving kindness meditation,
Yeah.
but it's computer interface. Basically, it has a little monitor that either goes on your ear, or if it's an older system, it goes on your finger like a pulse oximeter. But it's really the same concept. It's reading in real time your heart rate, and also how it changes and how smoothly it changes. And it's looking for what's called heart coherence and heart rate variability. And there's just so much neat research. It's called Heart Math, and it's widely available. There's also a book on it. It doesn't have to be biofeedback. That just helps me, because I can see in the moment while I'm practicing this gratitude, am I in good coherence? Am I in great coherence? Am I in poor coherence? And I can change it. I can go, oh, I just had a little think, like you mentioned, like going up here, thinking up in our heads, and that can create either anxiety or depression, or just analyzing instead of going here, into our heart and really going from there, where they know that it's a metronome. It's got the highest magnetic field of any organ in our body, and it can really create an entrainment, for peacefulness and well-being, and
Oh,
then
I love it.
health, right?
I love it, Ryan. I mean, you're speaking so eloquently right now, because to me, the hard part of this whole thing is we don't talk enough about it. I mean, it's all about relationship, and relationship to others,
Right.
relationship to yourself. And when you're talking about relationship, you really are talking about the heart, the
Yeah.
heart connection. And boy, if there's anything that's gonna save us, it's, I mean, you talk about saving lives, and that's what we're all talking about right now. I mean, whatever your strategy is, go for it. But heart math and heart to heart connections and forgiveness and gratitude and compassion and love and hope, all of these things, if we can engender these things into our system, everything else kind of comes in line, and it makes sense, and it helps. And it really, I mean, biologically and physiologically and neurochemically and all of those, it will, like you said, synchronize everything. I mean, it's powerful, and it's empowering, because again, it has nothing to do with the new and latest designer drug. It has to do with relationship. And
Right.
I know your practice and my practice are built on relationships, and that relational connection to your patient. And to me, there's a magic that happens when that happens. And everyone knows this: when you connect with somebody, when you resonate, and when you harmonize, and when you have that coherence, there is a certain thing that happens, and it's healing. It's a very healing,
Yeah.
and proven, I mean, scientifically proven, that you do heal when you make those kinds of connections.
Right. And I think that kind of brings me into, and I know, time kind of flies, but it brings me to the concept of, and maybe we could just have a final little conversation about this, but resilience, right? Again, we can pick up from kind of that fear, say that we have some power over it with some of these techniques that we've mentioned, and that can hopefully build a sense of resilience. And I just wrote down a definition for resilience in case people want to know like what I mean by that. But this is kind of what people define it as. It's commonly defined as a person's ability to mentally or emotionally cope with a crisis or return to pre-crisis status quickly. It exists when a person uses mental processes and behaviors in promoting personal assets and protecting themselves from the potential negative effects of stressors. So that's kind of, I think, what we're talking about is how do we build, physical resilience, emotional resilience, and the kind that is that is lasting, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I totally agree. And the thing I think about is how accessible resilience really is. And it's not just for the healthy. What I like about the idea, the concept of resilience, is even if you're sick, even if you're one of God forbid you have to deal with a high risk category, or I even hate the word comorbidities. I mean, if you fit into that category, get rid of that word, because you still have all the possibility and the potential to be resilient. And when they talk about the higher rates of death in these groups, and I can just feel the shuddering that goes on in people's lives when they hear that. But you know what? It's a small percentage that actually have to get to the point of dying. A large percentage of even that group stays resilient and will fight through. Their system is good enough. You don't have to be perfect. I think you just have to have a setup where you, first of all, mentally believe that you can do this. Second of all, that you actually do have I have the same suggestions for someone that's on chemo than I do an Olympic athlete. Eat your fruits and vegetables. Think about your vitamin D levels. Think about your love connections, like we were just talking about, and your connections to other human beings. Think about your stress level and your mindfulness. And you know what? Even if you have comorbidities, you still are going to live and survive in so many circumstances. Your chances go way higher. And that's what else do we have? I mean, we can support and hope for other things from the outside that might cost a lot, have to do a lot of research, have to wait on FDA approvals. All the things we're talking about are available right now.
Absolutely.
And you can do it. I mean, even though, that's what I love. It's not prejudice. There's no prejudice here. There's no special people that get this.
There's no waiting, really. Like you said, it's a choice. You can start right now, and you could start with one thing and go from there.
And I know that we need each other, though, to keep going, because I can get all excited about this, and then I have a bad day, and then I want to go back to some bad habits. And I don't want to be mindful, and I don't, I have these challenges, and then I need an interaction like this, like you and I are having, where we can build each other up again. Then I think everybody should go for that, go for connections that really enliven you.
Because we know we're social animals, we're social beings, and with that we thrive. Without it, we do not thrive by any means.
And then you're exactly, the opposite is true. Now, even if you're so healthy, if you don't have that connection, you're not going to thrive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really think that's hopefully, where we've come across in this conversation, for those listening, they will have a few things that they could do right now, starting now, that will impact them in a seriously positive way. And also give them, again, like the courage and the belief that we will move past all of this, and it will be, we might be better for it.
Exactly. There's always going to be something more powerful that comes out of a challenge. I mean, we can get pretty lackadaisical if we're sort of in a soft, comfy area. But when we're challenged, then our sense of creative thinking and problem solving, it comes to the forefront. And I really know that that's what's going to happen here. And I hope that like you said, the people that are hearing this, if they have contributions, and if they have another, because I want to hear from anybody that has another thought, or if we've stimulated another something that they want to share, I hope there's going to be an opportunity on some level for them to chime in.
So if anybody wants to reach you, can they go through, just go to your website, and is there a contact us form?
Sure. Yeah. thegreenmedicalpractice.com is the website. thegreenmedicalpractice.com. And you can look me up. You could even look up, green medicine doctor in Oak Park, or Green Doctor Oak Park.
They could possibly get a hold of you via, they could email you if they had a question?
Email and phone number. Dr. Paul at thegreenmedicalpractice.com.
Awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out today. And like you said, I was really excited about this. And so thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. It was a great talk. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, we will get this recording just put up as soon as possible. I think Dr. Paul, you'll have it, so you could also put it to your outlets on your YouTube channel and on your
Great.
website.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the same. So
Thank you.
I hope that you have a great rest of the day. Let's do this again.
All right. Yeah. There's no end to this.
Exactly. All right.